All right. How is everybody doing? This is Sean McVeigh with Sean's Outdoor Adventures, getting everything booted up for tonight's live show. I am very excited, as always, to be coming to you live. I'm looking over here on the computer to make sure that the stream is coming through. Amen. Thank you, God. It's coming through. All right. So what I like to do is just kind of start off a little slow here, give people a chance to get signed on, get linked in, all that stuff to get part of the episode here. And that way, you know, I don't get into the meat of the content until people are ready for it. So I got some people signing on. John Klopp, how you doing? Andrew Edwards, hey, how you doing? Jack out there in Illinois, how are you doing, my friend? Chris, Step, how's it going, man? I'm looking forward to tonight's show, and I'm thanking all of you who are jumping on right now. Jerry, good to have you on. Actually, it's funny because I just realized I'm calling out some names, and there's going to be a delay. So, Sylvester B, hey, how you doing? Jamie, how's it going? So I just want to thank everybody who's jumping on right now. These are names that I'm calling off. They're on my YouTube channel signing on right now. This is being broadcast all over the place. And there's more places that it's showing up right now than I'm probably even aware of. So I'm going to try to remember to repeat this request. But I have a request that if you have a burning question that you would like to ask me, I'm asking two things. One, you pop over to my channel to make the question in the live feed here, because I'm a one-man show. I can't monitor all these different forums and areas where this is going out. So if you can help me out by just bringing your question onto my Sean's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel. Let me just come over here while I'm saying this. Sean is spelled S-E-A-N. If you type in Sean's Outdoor Adventures in like a YouTube search, you're going to find my channel. So you can pull that up in a new tab, and then you can ask the question in the live feed there. That's one request. The other is, as you can see right now, I'm talking. I just walked away from where the computer's at. There's a lot of people who are throwing up hellos and whatever. There's people making comments and things like that, which means if you ask a question right now, by the time I get to questions and answers, it's going to be buried. And so what I ask of you is simply hold your questions until I say I'm going to start taking questions. That way you put them on right when I go to look for them, and that's going to give me the best chance of catching everybody's questions, because I want to get to as many questions as I possibly can in this broadcast. If by chance it gets to where I'm not able to find your question, or if you see that I'm not finding your question, ask it again so it pops up frequent at the very start of where the feed where I'm looking at. But if I don't happen to get to it, I'm going to repost this. Actually, let me hit record. I am going to repost this on my channel afterwards. This live feed, it's great, but as far as the long-term product that I want on my channel, the quality, sometimes the audio goes in and out, things like that. That's just some of the things you deal with live feeds. So on my channel, I'm recording it now in high definition. I'm going to repost it in high definition, and the audio will be, clean all the way through. And so when that video is up, please feel free to add your question in the comment section, and I'll try to get to it there. Again, this will all, as far as the ones that I'm monitoring, is on my YouTube channel. Type in Sean's Outdoor Adventures, spelled S-E-A-N''S, and you'll be able to find my channel that way, and I will be able to answer your questions there. I appreciate everybody that's watching on Bowtech's Facebook and website, and their Excalibur, Diamond, all those other locations where this is going out. I'm very grateful to all of you who are tuning in, and I hope you are enjoying this series as much as I am. I enjoy doing this. If you're not familiar with my website, seansoutdooradventures.com, I had some people asking me this week if I have videos on map reading. I do have an instructional video on the store page of my website, seansoutdooradventures.com. If you want to check it out, it's pretty inexpensive. It's a download, and it's got a ton of great information on there. So that's where you can find it, just to answer some of those questions. Today is a very good day. I want to say a special thanks to all of you who have subscribed to my YouTube channel. Today I surpassed 27,000 subscribers, and I thank you. And I ask you for your help. My goal is to hit 100,000, and my original hope was to hit that by the end of the year. That's a huge goal to try to accomplish. And the only way it's going to happen is if you help me out. So if you haven't been on my YouTube channel before, or even if you have, I ask you please to share my videos around and encourage your friends and people that you know to like them and subscribe to them. And click the bell icon, which notifies you when I make an upload or something like that. So just go on there, Sean's Outdoor Adventures on the YouTube, and pick out some of the videos you like and maybe share them around. I appreciate your help with that. One last thing before we get into tonight's content is my Facebook page. I mainly focus on YouTube, but I do have a Sean's Outdoor Adventures Facebook page, and I need about 35 more likes to hit 1,500 likes. So if you haven't liked my Sean's Outdoor Adventures Facebook page, help me out. Help me hit that 1,500 mark tonight. That would be awesome if you could jump on there at some point tonight, Sean's Outdoor Adventures on Facebook, and like that. I am grateful for those people who jump in there and support me because, hey, I view this as a community, as a family, and I do not claim to be able to do it all on my own. I need help from people like you, so I appreciate those of you who jump in and help me with that. So actually, I wanted to get into the meat of the content here, but there's one other thing I wanted to clarify, and that has to do with the map reading challenge for this year. You know, people are really excited about this because not only do the guys on the map reading challenge have a chance to win a brand new Bowtech Rain 6, but so do the viewers. So does one of the viewers. And, okay, someone's trying to call me there, and I had to check to make sure there wasn't an issue with the feed, but it was something else. So, as far as the map reading challenge, not only do the guys on the map reading challenge have a chance to win the bow, but so do you. That means somebody, whoever you are watching right now, you could win a brand new Bowtech Rain 6. And I'm going to just go over that one more time because I still get questions about that. In addition, the team that wins the map reading challenge, they all are going to win an XOP Air Raid tree stand. Here's a box of, I just did a couple of videos on this the other day. Here's the box from it. This is the stand they're going to win, but so are you. You have a chance as the viewer to win one of those for yourself. And I just want to quickly tell you how that happens because some people are still wondering. And those of you who are tuning in for the first time maybe didn't even know that. So let's just make two categories here. I'm going to put an I for individual and a T for team. So the individual who can win a Bowtech, part of how they win is the amount of views that their videos gets added to their hunting score. So if you like a particular guy on the map reading challenge, you can help him win that Bowtech by watching not only his videos, but sharing them and helping him get views. So video views, I'll just put V for video and V for views. Video views is part of his score along with the score he gets on the actual hunt. But then also you have the opportunity to vote for him on, it's going to be embedded on my website and on Bowtech's website. There's going to be a page with all these map reading challenge guys. You're going to see their picture, their face, a little bit about them, and their videos that we're airing, that I'm airing on the Sean's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel are going to be embedded there. So you can watch them right there, and then you can vote on Bowtech's website or on my website. It's all going to be integrated. And when you vote, your name goes into the drawing to win a Bowtech. So for you, you're going to want to vote for the guy that you want to see win. And it doesn't matter if that guy ends up winning. As soon as you vote, period, your name goes into the lottery. And it's not who you think is going to win, like, oh, out of all the hunters, I think this guy's going to win, but who you want to win. Like, hey, I really connect with this guy's personality. I'd like to see him win. I'm going to vote for him. So that's how the voting is. It's not a matter of who wins in a sense. It's you supporting the guy that you connect with. So you want to vote so that your name goes in for the Bowtech. And for the team, again, it's going to be there's going to be video views. There's going to be a large part of it. So you want to share the team videos. I'm going to have, I'm going to have that explained when those videos go live. But then if you want your name to go into the drawing for the Air Raid, XOP Air Raid, on every page of my website, there is a thing to sign up for my newsletter. So I'll just N for news, L for letter. You can sign up for my newsletter, and in the newsletter that I'll be sending out during the map reading challenge, you can register, and that's how you're going to be in the drawing to win the XOP. And there's other prizes, like I mentioned last time. There's a bunch of prizes from the Allen Company. Whoever wins the bow from here, they're also going to get a bow case from the Allen Company, and you can also be in the drawing. I'm going to draw a name for the XOP Air Raid, and I'm going to draw a name for the bow case from the Allen Company. Okay, so that's cleared up. We got that taken care of. If you are sitting there asking questions right now, my computer's over there, so I'm not seeing them. I apologize. But you can save that question for later if you feel like you need it answered. But I have some content that I really want to get into here. And tonight's focus is I want to throw out some ideas and strategies for the pre-rut and the rut. But I also want to just start off with something I didn't have time to get to last week, which is that mid-season lull. So last week we talked about plans for the early season, like that first week of your hunting season. And as part of that, I just want to draw a distinction here because I want to focus on the pre-rut tonight as part of this. The words pre-rut really kind of can encompass the whole early hunting season, really. But I wanted to really hone in on that, let's call it the week before rutting activity really kicks in, where bucks are chasing does and things like that. So I want to focus on that as our sort of pre-rut, even though it can be the whole start of the early, hunting season up to that point. And right before that, there's a lot of people and a lot of places that experience this, what we call a mid-season lull. It's after that beginning of the season. It's before that pre-rut activity starts to kick in. And there's this time period where, man, I'm not seeing any deer. Nobody I know is seeing any deer. And what do we do? And to introduce this idea, I want to talk about energy expenditure from you, the energy that you're putting into your hunting. Now, when I was really starting to film hunts and trying to produce videos, I was really pushing myself to hunt as much as I could. It was before I had kids, so I had a little more time to play with. And I was exhausting myself. So I was just hitting it hard every day of the season. And by the time we were getting into that rut time, I was almost tired. I was just worn out, from getting up way before daylight, hunting all day, going to bed way after, dark because of by the time I got home, all that stuff. And so my point to you is, especially if you are limited in how much you can hunt or whatever, is I would say spend most of your energy in that first week, and then when the season is in a little bit of a lull, conserve energy. Don't be running like crazy trying to get that deer when the conditions aren't as good for you to get a deer. And then save your energy for when things start to get activated again. That's just a suggestion for you to think about, especially if you're trying to make videos and you're trying to grow something like what I have on YouTube or whatever. Energy expenditure. So think about that. Put a lot of your energy that first week. Now in that lull, let's talk about that real quick. What I would suggest, if the deer aren't moving, try to incorporate more still hunting in your hunting during that lull. And I would also say focus more of that lull period on areas that you don't view as your hot spots or your best areas. Stay away from your best areas. Keep those fresh for when the hunting is ready and really good. And there's a lot of guys, a lot of hunters out there who don't even enter the woods until the rut. So to them, that's the beginning of the season. And it's because of this. There's, early in the season, you could ruin a spot. The deer could be onto you when the conditions aren't even right. And now by the time the conditions are right, your spot's already kind of messed up because the deer are onto you. So I would part of your strategy is find some other spots that aren't your hot spots that you can do a little still hunting and things like that during that mid-season lull. And here's another thing to think about. Let me do a drawing. Let's say there's a field right here. And this field is surrounded by woods, okay? And you know there's a guy that hunts a stand right here. I hunt public land. Maybe you hunt on a lease that's shared with other people. I don't know. But if you're hunting areas that other people can hunt, even relatives, you might even have a farm or something where neighbors or relatives are allowed to hunt it. So you have other people that you're dealing with, even if they're close to you. So let's say somebody hunts right here and you're getting up on that mid-season lull, okay? And this person's going to be in there for an evening hunt. What way is the wind blowing? Let's say, let me grab my red marker here just so it stands out a little bit. Let's say you're getting a west wind, and in this drawing, let's just say it's coming from that direction. And you know that so-and-so is hunting here. So what can you do? Where are the deer going to be? Let's say the deer are going to try to use the wind to their advantage, so they're going to be moving more like on this side of the food source. And let's say, you know, they're going to be coming from all these different possible directions. I mean, even if they're planning to come this way, where could the deer possibly go with that person there? Let's say that person is going to be spooking the deer just by him or her being there. Let's say all these deer that are moving over here are going to wind him. So now they get to about here, and what do? They put their nose up. A lot of times when deer sort of wind somebody or whatever, they turn around and go back the direction they came very often. Because why? They knew it was safe there. They just came from there. So now for you as a hunter, but that's not always the case. Let me also say this. They might move off to another primary food source. So let's say there's an oak stand over here. O for oak. There's an oak stand over there. They might move off from the fields over to the oak stand. And so what they might do is, you know, have a movement pattern like that. So something you can try to incorporate is there an area I can set up where the deer might get, you know, kind of moved in that direction if they wind this other person? That's even if they're moving. So so maybe over in here or somewhere in here, that could be a possible tree stand location for you. But let's back up and say the deer aren't even moving in daylight. Well, here's the other option you have, and I would say focus more on morning sits rather than evening sits in the mid-season lull when things aren't moving. And the reason for that is this. Let me just erase this for a second. So mid-season lull, if you're planning out your hunts, where am I going to spend my energy? I'm going to spend more energy in the mornings and on days that other people can hunt. Okay, now this really isn't a good spot to sit in the morning. Why? Because if most people have to access these types of stands through the fields, and so if the deer are out in these fields in the morning and you're going in, you're blowing the deer out of there. They already know there's human pressure coming in. They're not coming back during daylight hours. So, first of all, stay away from those areas in the mornings. Like if you're going to hunt deer that are in this field, find an entrance point way far over here and get set up, somewhere in the morning. But what you could do is if let's say that there's deer in this field and they're going to bed down here. Let's say they're going to bed, that's their bedding area, their primary bedding area. If there's a way to enter this hunting situation from the backside, look into that. Or maybe from over here, but stay completely away from where they're going to be. Now, if you're here, maybe you can set somebody else up over here. And that's what the point I wanted to bring in here is try to hunt in teams. So what you can do is if you're here and you got somebody over there, now I hunt by myself, so it's hard to do this. I actually have to figure out where's the other people going to be hunting, and then I got to base my stand off of where they're going to be moving. So if I know someone's setting up over here, I could try to come in over here, and when this person gets down and starts walking out, they might drive deer in my direction. So when you're planning morning hunts in the lull and you're trying to play off other hunters, or let's say you're going to hunt in a team, and I'm hunting here, I want this person, like if it's his turn to do the walk-off, let's call it the walk-off, which is really a soft drive, I want his angle to go like this. Because any deer that he bumps, they're going my direction. And here's the other thing is, you want to sit on key travel trails or travel corridors when you're in these types of hunting situations, because when deer are trying to escape, a lot of times to put distance between them and the person who pushed them, they like to get on those primary trails because they know them and they can just zip right down them. And then once they get a safe distance away, then they kind of branch off to go hide again. So you want to try to find some key travel corridors that are coming from the direction that this person could be walking. Now, if you're playing off of another hunter and he's going to exit the woods, or he or she is going to exit the woods like over this way, you might still get some deer movement looping back up in you. And a lot of times deer like to go up and behind whatever it was that pushed them. They'll do a big like loop. But this is, you know, the whole point is trying to play off other people's movement in that mid-season lull. All right, I just wanted to give you a couple ideas there. Again, if you have questions that you're thinking of right now, ask those when I get to the question segment. That way I can be sure to get them. So just, you know, maybe jot them down on the side right now, and then when I ask for questions, we can get to them, because there could be people posting questions right now. And again, the computer's over there, I'm over here. So now let's talk about that pre-rut time period. I'm just going to draw a field. I want to talk about 2 examples of field, and then, well, for here we're going to call this a field. But then I want to give you another example. It's a food source. So let's say there's an area of a forest where you hunt, where there's some oak trees or some kind of food source that is going to draw the deer. You can view them the same. It's a food source. The food source is going to draw the does. The does are going to draw the bucks. So that pre-rut time period, let's call that like the last week of October in the northern region of the country. I hunt a lot of Pennsylvania, Maryland, New York, all those states all the way across, you know, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, all those. It's going to be very similar in that altitude range across the board. You know, getting toward that end of October is when things start to break loose a little bit. And what I mean is your bachelor groups that were together like in the beginning of the season, the first part of the season, your bucks right now are already in their bachelor groups. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. Like here we are, it's the end of August. You're going to start seeing more groups of bucks traveling together. I mean, there's going to be times where they're still going to be by themselves, but they're starting to meet up. And a lot of times your bachelor groups, they meet up in open areas or areas that they can soft spar. They can put their antlers together and just push each other, and they can tell who's stronger. And that's part of establishing a pecking order. So when you get into the rut, by nature, it's to help prevent major severe injuries and even death from fighting during the rut. It still happens, but when you have that more or less happens when you have 2 bucks that don't know each other, that are around the same caliber, and they come across each other. But when you're in a core area that the deer know each other, they already have this pecking order established through these bachelor groups. And they know who's the strongest, and the younger and weaker ones are going to yield to him when the rut comes in. That's why a lot of times if you see a bigger buck chasing a doe and there's several other smaller bucks just kind of trailing behind, well, they already know he's in charge. I still want to be a part of this thing, but I'm yielding to him. I'm staying out of his way. That's why. Okay, so in the early season, the bucks are kind of meeting in these bachelor groups, and we already talked about that in last week's episode as far as setting up on them. But now we're past the mid-season lull. We're getting into that last week of October. These guys their bachelor groups are for the most part broken up. They're off on their own, and they're still laying down sign. They're doing the rubs more now. They're sort of being territorial a little bit more now. You can increase the aggressiveness of your calling a little bit, but here's my suggestion. I mean, and I mentioned this I already did a series or an episode on calling in this whole series, and although you can increase your aggressiveness in some respect, I still try to view calling as an act of desperation. Like, I didn't get my scouting right to put myself where the deer were going to be. I'm out of range, and so I got to try to make up for that now, and now I'm going to call. So I encourage you to push yourself with your scouting and your stand placement picking so that you don't even need to call. But if you're in a situation where you need to, at this point, I encourage you to just call if you see the buck you want and he's not in range. Because if you start getting too aggressive with the call and you have does in the area and you start to spook them up, it spooks the deer herd up, it can mess your whole hunting spot up. And I'm telling you, I mean, it only takes one flub, one mistake, one evening to really ruin one of your best spots. So if you're playing this game for the long haul, you want to protect your good spots. And if you're in one of your good spots, you don't want to blow it here. So now I avoid calling. Let me come over here for a second. This buck right here, this is my nicest PA buck. He was 11 point. I got him right at the end of October doing exactly what I'm trying to explain to you here. I did not call. It was hard because I wasn't seeing the deer that I wanted, and it was at the very end of the hunt, and the deer started to enter the field that I was sitting on the edge of. So so this is the deer I'm kind of referring to. Let me come back over here for my example. And so in this situation, let's say that I was sitting right here because I knew that that was one of the best areas. There was a little, based on topography, there was a draw and stuff that came into a field here. I knew this was the area that would give me the best chance at a deer. And it was right at dark. I was thinking I'm going to pack up, but all of a sudden I heard deer moving behind me. Out comes a few does, and behind the does came that buck right over there, and you can see him again in a little bit. So here is my point. If I was calling and making a bunch of hocus pocus during the hunt, I could have kept those does from coming in and never got that buck. So try to ride it out. That's my opinion. If you can avoid calling, avoid it. Rely more on your scouting. Now, this is the key point that I've been trying to build up to. Bucks, especially your good bucks, like to show up at the feeding areas right before dark. Let me come back over here again. This buck here, this 11 point, he came walking out kind of with the does, behind them at the very end of the hunt. I mean, there was probably about 3 or 4 minutes of shooting light left. So I had to really hang in there. He came at the last minute. So just keep that in mind. If you're somebody, especially you new hunters, it's easy to get restless and fidgety. At this point, you might have been hunting for almost a month or more now, getting into this time of the hunting season, and you might be restless because you still haven't gotten a shot at a buck. You got to calm down. You got to just try to keep the call in the bag at this point, unless the buck's in sight, but not close enough for a shot, and you want to try to bring them in. Try to hang in there. So your good bucks like to show up right before dark at that end of October time period to start checking the does. If they don't find any that are hot, a lot of times then they'll go off and they'll make more rubs and more scrapes because we're getting closer. Now that is, I mean, not always the case. They might just show up and start rubbing and scraping or whatever, but they're showing up at that food source kind of right near the end of the day. And it'll also depend on how much hunting pressure is in your areas. I hunt a lot of areas that have a lot of hunters. I don't have my own land to hunt. I'm hunting private. I mean, well, if it's private land, other people are allowed to hunt there too. But 99% of my hunting is public land. And so there's other, with other hunting pressure going on and different things, even within the deer herd, there's changes that are going on in the deer herd that cause changes and fluctuations in the deer movement. Like that mid-season lull could also be connected to those bachelor groups starting to break up and activity within the deer herd beginning to change. So anyway, going into that last week of October when things start to heat up a little bit, if you're hunting near a food source, hang in there till the end and try to avoid calling, because a lot of times those good bucks show up right at the end of the hunt, and if you've already scared off the other deer or messed up the spot because of calling, you're not even going to get a crack at those deer. So that's something for you to consider. Now let me just erase this for a second. And a lot of times too, especially new hunters, they find scrapes and rubs and they sit on them. And in this situation, you still want to put more emphasis on the does and the food sources than sitting on the scrapes. In my opinion, there will be situations where a buck will come to a scrape and you might get a shot around that time period, but I've seen better activity, and even when I guided in Illinois, I wasn't getting to hunt, I was guiding, and so I would just glass areas in the evenings all the time. I would see bucks, good bucks, like the one I showed you over there, my 11 point, showing up at those food sources right as it was getting dark. And a lot of times they weren't big fields like I was saying here. Like if you have a little cluster of oak trees in the forest, you can view that as your crop field. The point is you got to view it as a food source. And so you got to approach that the same way I was talking about the field. Wait until, just hang in there. Try to not call. I mean, and you can mix it up. Like if you're not having success, you're not seeing deer, okay, break out the calls. Maybe the next hunt down the road. Okay, look, I'm going to try to not call tonight and see how it goes. If you're seeing deer, if you're seeing doe, and you start, or let me just say it this way. If you're seeing deer, just not the buck you want, try to not call. If deer are moving, try to just hang in there and see what the deer do on their own. Then if you see the buck you want and he's not coming your way and you want to give it a try and you're willing to risk ruining the stand, if you try calling to him, go ahead. But just try to, and I'm just emphasizing this because there's so many new people to hunting that really blow their spots up because they start calling in these time periods and they mess their spot up. So approach that little food source, hang in there till dark, just try to ride it out, especially if you've got doe coming in. That's a good thing. My friend calls them live decoys because that's what the bucks are going to show up to check right at dark. Here's where you could run into problems. It's happened to me plenty of times, and this is also a part of the topic I want to bring in there. The young bucks, your 1.5 old and your 2.5-year-old bucks. They are inexperienced when it comes to the rut. They're crazy excited that the rut's coming in. You're going to see young bucks running does already. They're going to be nose to the ground, grunting. And I have people every year commenting on my videos or emailing me saying, the rut's in, I saw bucks chasing does. Usually it's the 1.5 old and the 2.5-year-old bucks that are doing that. It's not your good bucks. So, and they're excited. It's too early. If you really get familiar with the deer herd and the does, you'll begin to notice this. Like, the does aren't ready. The does are annoyed. The big bucks aren't even showing up like these young ones are early. And the problem is sometimes your young bucks can actually clear your food source of all the does by chasing them so that, when the big boys do start to come in the area, there's no deer there for him to check out. He might just move on. That can be a part of your problem. So you got to kind of guess. Like if you have a young buck in there blowing all the deer out, well, then maybe you could do a little calling and maybe bring somebody in or a deer in to investigate. But if the deer are there, try to avoid calling. And keep that in mind. If you're hunting and you're seeing bucks chasing does, try to get a good look at the deer and try to age the deer. Your younger bucks, I'm going to try to maybe make videos on aging. I mean, people have asked me to, and maybe we could even talk about that in the live stream. It's just hard in the live stream when you don't have like pictures of bodies of deer that I can just paste up here to kind of use as an example. And but anyway, that's something I can look into. So in that last week of October, there's going to be excitement with the young bucks. Don't be fooled by that. The big boys are not there yet. They're hanging low. They're going to wait until that last minute to show up to see, okay, where are the ladies at? Where are they in the estrus cycle? Because the rut is sort of like a bell-shaped curve. So it kind of comes in like this. I mean, usually the peak, and I'm going to talk about that more next week, usually the peak is right around November 12, 14 time period. So you could be here, you could be, let's say this is October 30th, just for argument. So October 30th, let's say, is right here. So you could have a doe in heat right here and a big buck chasing her. That can happen. However, the peak of the rutting activity is weeks away. And so that can be happening too. You know, like your young bucks can be running around like crazy, and it is possible for you to see Mr. Big with nose to the ground because, you know, maybe the night before, you know, he went, checked the food sources, then checked the scrapes, and little Miss So-and-so stopped by my scrape today and she's ready. And so he just put his nose on the ground and started trailing her then. That can happen. But when you're talking about the big picture, when's the bulk of this activity happening? Not yet. And so you still want to play your cards right. You know, you want to maximize, let's see, you want your chances to stay up here. Your chances of success you want up there. And in order to have that success, to give yourself the best chance, you got to play your cards right. You can't just go in there, go nuts, rattling and grunting and carrying on, because you could really be blowing up your spots. Now, I mean, you can, but you can ruin your spots. And I am addressing this especially to the new people. A lot of you who are experienced hunters, this is all, you know all this. But I have so many people who are new at hunting who follow my channel and write to me and comment and all that. And they need to hear that right there. So let's transition into during that pre-rut time period, the end of October, if you're going to do calling, I would say the best time for you to do calling is a late morning time period. So if you've sat through your morning sit and let's say you look at your watch, okay, let's say shooting hours start 6:45. All right, your peak movements are usually within that first hour or so. Maybe say to yourself, all right, I'll give it till about 9 o'clock. And if I'm not getting, good deer activity by then maybe I'll break out the grunt call and grunt a little bit. I like to start soft. I talked about that in the calling video, and then work my way up. So you could try calling a little bit, and in that situation, if you have a buck who's still on the hoof doing something, you might have a chance of calling him in. The bucks who are not interested in that probably are already bedded up. And so later in the morning would be the best time if you really want to do some calling, maybe even break out the rattling, do a little rattling stuff. But, don't get too aggressive with it yet. So, okay, let's move in and talk a little bit about the rut, and then I'm going to move into taking questions because I'm trying to keep an eye on my time, and I can always readdress some of these topics next week and, cover some more in-depthly. But let's move into talking about the rut. Now, in the rut, I'm going to draw our field again. And again, I use a field because that's what a lot of people, it could be a food plot, it could be a regular farm field, but I want you to view this as a category, and the category is food. So the same can be applied to our oak flat. Our oak flat in the forest, okay? That's your food source, and that's what's going to draw the doe, okay? So much of what we're doing with the rut really revolves around the doe. You got to keep that in mind. And the doe, one of the things they're most concerned about really is eating. They want to eat. And so a lot of our game plan was focused on this. And you're going to see a lot of scrapes. I'm just going to pretend that's a scrape. You're going to see scrapes around your food sources. And a lot of times in your forest, your rubs and scrapes might not be right at the oak flat. Or it might be, but it might be on the fringes or over on the way to it. I hunt mountainous areas. And if you hunt hilly terrain, start to transition your focus just before that rut kicks in, like that early November, on your benches. Again, I've talked about this in my videos. And again, if you need help reading topography, I have that resource on my website, Sean'sOutdoorAdventures.com. But your benches, think about this, guys and girls, whoever's watching, think about this. Deer are a four-legged creature, and the buck has to get up on the doe, mount her for the mating process. That's just the reality of it. Is it easier to do that on a flat surface or on a hillside like this? Think about it. The flat surface. So that's what makes benches and flatter areas your hot spots when we get into this time period, that early November, getting into the rut. Now, if you can combine one of those types of areas, those of you who hunt in the mountains, if you can combine something like a bench that feeds into a food source like your oak flat, or if you know a key bedding area, like let me just, this would be your best case scenario, a key bedding area. Let me go back to black. Let's say the key bedding area is, there's a real thick patch in your forest right here, and then there's a bench that kind of connects it somehow to a food, and it might not be straight across, it might be down here, you know, but if you can find that bench going into that rut time period, the focus starts to come off the food a little bit. That's what I want to get at here. The focus comes off the food a little bit, and it starts to go into what's the best mating area. I mean, where can bucks run around and chase the does? It's easier on flatter areas. And so, you know, does actually have certain areas they like to go and hang out with, or hang out in these types of scenarios. Now, for those of you who are in flatter areas, Ohio, Midwest, whatever, I mean, everything's flat. And so you're not necessarily looking for benches, but it's still going to be connected to the food in that, where are my key rutting activity signs, your rubs and scrapes that really lead to the food source. The chasing, once the chasing breaks in, once a buck gets on a doe that's, you know, potentially close, I mean, they're running all over the place. I mean, they can be running circles around you almost, as long as you're in their core area, you know, they can be running all around you. So you got to try to, you know, play that. And I've got about 10 minutes left before I got to start to wrap up. So I'm going to right now transition into taking questions. So if you have questions right now, please go to my Sean's Outdoor Adventures YouTube page where the live feed is, and put them in there. So I'm going to go over here and start addressing them. And I can address like some of this stuff in more detail next week as well. I just wanted to introduce some ideas. But again, let me just say that in your planning, what we're looked at here tonight with the pre-rut and the rut, with the pre-rut, which I'm really calling just that week before, or that last week of October, before we get into November when the bell curve starts to increase there, you still have your good bucks showing up a lot of times right before dark. So I'm just encouraging you, don't ruin your spots by overcalling in those situations. When we get into the actual rut, our focus actually comes off of the feeding a little bit. I mean, you can still hunt those food sources because a lot of times your field's where your main scrapes are. So bucks are going to cruise those field edges, running scrape lines, looking for does. But wherever it is in your hunting area where you have the hot scrapes, and a hot scrape will be checked all year round, especially by your big bucks. And I've run trail cameras on public land, put them on a hot scrape in the middle of July, and had all these huge bucks that I never saw before coming and checking the scrape. In full velvet, they're coming. It's not that they're checking the scrape looking for a hot doe. What they are doing is, it is a communication source. It is a place where the deer come to say, hey, I'm in the area. They lick the overhanging limb, they leave their scent. The other deer know, okay, Butch is in town, or, you know, whatever, you know, this deer is here. I know because I know this deer's smell. And so that is how they're communicating with each other, and they do it all year round. So if you know of a hot scrape and you want to monitor it, you can put a trail camera on that all year round, and that might even help you realize if it's a hot scrape or not. And if it's not, you're not going to get the visitation. But if it is, the visits are going to be there. Okay, I'm coming over here. I've got my computer over this way, so actually I could probably even bring this down a little bit because I'm going to be sitting down. And looking over here at my feed, just give me a second here. And also, it would help if you put a question mark at the end of your question, just so I can. It helps to pop out a little bit when I can see that it's a question. Let's see. I'm looking for. Okay, when do you start mock scrapes? That's Northeast Outdoor Adventures. Mock scrapes are something that you can do. I mean, I know people that are making them now, not that they have any impact, but if I'm a hunter and I want to try creating a mock scrape, I mean, you can do it as early as the beginning of the season, you know, and then you can monitor it and see what's the reaction of the deer, you know, and if you're making a mock scrape, I mean, I would say if you're doing an early season mock scrape, like, you know, for me in Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, well, Pennsylvania, New York, it's the beginning of October is the hunting season. Maryland opens, you know, early September. That's even earlier. That's when the bachelor groups are still really hanging together. But I would say stay away from any kind of doe and heat scent. And that goes, especially you young guys who are hoping to get lucky and you think, oh, I'm going to just spray this doe and heat scent everywhere and a buck's going to get excited. It's going to work more for your younger bucks, your 1.5-year-old bucks, your 2.5-year-old bucks, that you might get one interested. But you can also risk spooking the does really bad. And when you spook up the does, you spook up the whole deer herd in your area. So if you're making a mock scrape, I would lean toward, you know, maybe a buck urine, and you can spray some regular doe pee in there, but stay away from doe and heat scent early in the season. It's not natural. You know, the deer aren't there yet in most situations. So that's so you could start doing mock scrapes early in the season. And if your hunting area is an area where the deer like to be and they're receptive to it, you know, you'll see that they'll, you know, keep visiting it. You could even set up a trail camera on it just to see what kind of activity you get. But my encouragement to you is focus more on the natural. Where are the deer naturally making that communication signpost of a scrape, that they want to go there to see who's been in the area? That's what you really want to try to hone in on, more so than when can I make my own mock scrape and try to fool a buck into coming into it. So I hope that answers your question and a little more so. Let's see. How does weather impact the rut, especially if we have another warm fall? Andre, the weather is probably the biggest impact on the rut altogether. I'm not really centered here. Let me just move this a little bit over. So the weather, I think, is the biggest. I mean, if it's warm, it's going to be hard. Last year, I was in Iowa. It was the hottest November in history from when they started recording the weather, was last year. And I was there the third week of November, and the bucks were almost totally disinterested. I mean, I was seeing good, you know, shooter bucks for a lot of people, you know, 8 points, 9 points in the 130 range, you know, public land. I was trying to hold out for something a little bigger, but they weren't even looking for those. They were just eating acorns because it was just so hot. And in the very last day that I was there, or the day I was like, I got to get going. I ended up shooting this deer. We finally had the temperature drop, and it was cold that morning, and that's when I saw my first chase. So as soon as that temperature dropped off. So the weather is probably more of an impact when the natural, everything else. I mean, people talk about the moon. I'm going to talk about the moon and the sun next week in my next week episode, and how that kind of plays into the rut and the rutting activity. But if the temperature is too hot, it's going to make life hard for us. And just to throw in an idea as far as hunting strategy goes, you know, if it's too hot, I would hunt it like that pre-rut time period where you're trying to catch the bucks right as they're coming to check the does, right at the end of the daylight. You know, so don't blow up your spots by overcalling and going crazy just because you're not seeing the deer. You got to be patient. That is going to be the biggest tool in your toolbox of tricks to get that deer, is being patient, more than your calls, more than anything else. You got to just hang in there till the very end there and hope that. Okay, how to hunt a bull. I'm not exactly sure what I think. I'm guessing you're asking me how to hunt a bull, like, you know, something like that. That can be difficult with the wind. You could have a really hard time. I mean that could just be a nightmare. So the biggest thing is if you can control your scent. If it's your own private property and you can build a blind where you can, you know, have your scent concealed, that would be ideal. But if it's somewhere where you have to go in and set up, hunting bulls it's just flat out tough with the wind. I mean, because you could have wind swirling down in, you could have wind swirling this way. Ah, man, that's just a nightmare. You're just going to have to try to do your best to control your odor. Let's see. Email Max. Anyone in Illinois interested in teaming up? Okay, so that's a question for somebody else. If anybody else has another question, fire it off now because I'm pretty much out of time. Sean, what works better, hang on stand or climber? It really all depends on the situation. if you're in an area where you have a tree you can climb in, I find that it's easier to get in and get out with a climber. When you put a climber on the tree, you tether your harness to the tree, and you just seesaw your way up the tree, and you're done. You pull your bow up, and you're ready to go. Unless, of course, you're setting up video camera equipment. With the hang-on stand, you got to hang on each climbing stick, and even if you do it to where you got your tree stand on your back, now when you're at the top of the tree, you've got to be comfortable with your harness and a good lineman setup where you can keep your balance. Get that tree stand on the tree. I feel like you use a lot more arm muscle to set up those hang-ons. And you really want to keep your arms as fresh as possible when you're bow hunting, especially because when you draw the bow, the more fatigued your arms are, the more inclined you are to shake. And you're already going to have buck fever most likely. And so for me personally, I mean, if I can use a climber, I will. Now, if you're somebody who has your own land, or you can leave your stand up where you're not having to set everything up, well, that's great. You can actually be quieter. You can go in, go up the stick, get in your stand and a hang on, and that's even better. So I guess it really depends on whether or not you're hunting your own land or land where you can leave a ladder up or climb the sticks, maybe just take off the bottom couple and put those on, but your stand's already there. But if you're in a situation where you're carrying everything in and carrying everything out, if you can use a climber, I personally think that's easier, and it's easier on your arms going into the hunt. So, hey, I want to say thank you again for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I pray God's blessing on all of you who are watching. Again, if you haven't been over to my YouTube channel, Sean's Outdoor Adventures, please get in there and help me with a subscribe. Share it with your friends. Check out my Facebook. Help me break that 1,500 mark. Help me go way beyond that. That'd be great. And next week, I want to talk a little bit about the sun and the moon and how that impacts some of the deer movement. And I'll talk some more about the weather probably in conjunction with that. And any questions or anything that I didn't get to tonight that I wanted to, I'll try to incorporate that next week. So thanks again, everybody. Take care. God bless you. I will try to figure out how to turn this off. Am I sure that I want to end it? Yes. God bless you.